is Niall Murray, and I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Computer and Software Engineering in the Technology University of Shannon. And I run a research team here called Timex, and we work with immersive and interactive media experiences. And I'm also a funded investigator in the Science Foundation Ireland ADAPT Centre. So what I'm going to kind of talk about here this morning at an introductory level is around this whole space of immersive technologies. And really, like, what are immersive technologies? We assume, and when people talk about immersive technologies, we assume we're talking about augmented reality, virtual reality, but you could be immersed in this call here right now. You could be immersed in a book. So like the definition of immersion has been around for decades, long before the technological advances we currently see. But in the context of technology, I really like this image here on the top right. It's from our friends in Accenture, and I've kind of adapted it a little bit to reflect that it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum from real reality, where we have two people talking face to face, the whole way to the other end of the spectrum on your right-hand side there in the top right, where people are working in a distributed collaborative virtual space, where all of the content they're consuming is virtual. And in between, there's various levels. There's various levels of, I'm just going to small bit of feedback there. In between, there's various levels of computer-generated content presented to the user. So if we start here at the right-hand side, we have two people interacting, talking about maybe an artifact in a museum. There's no digital content presented. They're in the real world, talking with each other, feeling and manipulating the artifacts in the museum. And as we move across this spectrum, as you can see here, the level of real world content we start to consume reduces slightly, and the level of computer generated or digital content we start to consume increases. So the kind of key terms or really popular terms now around these kind of immersive technologies are augmented reality and virtual reality, right? But there's another spectrum. So we're on this call here today, and this Zoom call, and I'm in my real world in my office here. People might be at home. They might be in their own offices, but they're consuming digital content, but they're fully aware of their real world surroundings. Okay, so we're just consuming audiovisual media here. If we move slightly on to the right of this spectrum, we might be driving our cars down the road, and in our field of view, we're getting information presented to us that can help us on our navigation. So this is directly in our field of view. So this is like an example of assisted reality. So augmented reality then, and you can see the augmented reality in the video clip below, or even in how to solve the Rubik's Cube, is where virtual content or computer-generated digital media content is overlaid on real-world objects. So we can experience augmented reality through a AR head-mounted display, or we could experience augmented reality through our smartphones, where we're looking through the screen. We can see the real-world object, and context-based information on that real-world object is presented to us. Now, this can be useful across a range of different application domains, and essentially it can augment our understanding of a particular object or task or these kinds of things. If we move towards the end of the spectrum on virtual reality, in virtual reality, we're wearing a VR head-mounted display, and all of the content that we're consuming is digital. So these experiences have now become quite advanced, where they're 6 degrees of freedom, 360 movement, and everything we consume is virtual. And today, when we consider virtual reality, most people talk about stimuli that capture or stimulate the audiovisual senses. We can go further than this nowadays, whereby truly immersive multimedia experiences, they can include haptic, or the sense of touch, as a modality, or even olfaction as a sense of smell. So really, our immersive experiences now are becoming very multimodal, very interactive, and this is incredibly powerful across a range of application domains. And one of the kind of key benefits and key challenges for this technology and adoption of this technology is that it's domain agnostic, so it's not specific to one particular industry. So you will see examples of the use of AR, VR, immersive technologies generally across health, education, tourism, smart manufacturing, the arts, social media and marketing.
I was offered to try out this.
A whole range of different application domains. And the kind of power of these technologies is that we move in AR and VR and these immersive technologies and extended reality technologies, we move from passive consumers of content to active consumers and active stakeholders in the experiences. So we're in the environments, we're manipulating the virtual content, we're changing the virtual content, we're moving naturally, our interactions are naturalistic. And what that means across a range of application domains, and I know Geoff is going to speak to this in a couple of moments, is that our behavior in those environments is ecologically valid. So in a training scenario, for example, or a health and safety scenario, for example, how we behave in that immersive experience reflects quite accurately, the research has shown this, reflects quite accurately how we behave in real world situations. And the power and where this can actually add value then is in terms of understanding the user behavior within these environments. And this is very powerful. And I know Geoff is going to speak to this in a couple of moments. So in terms of the work we do in ADAPT, so we develop these kind of experiences when we're working on research and working in industry. And our specific research remit is in this area of quality of experience, as Declan mentioned at the beginning. So we're all coming to this call this morning, and we all have different systems we're consuming this content on. We have different network conditions. And quality of experience is about how to understand the user perceptual quality of these media experiences, not just immersive, so media experiences more generally. So we essentially define methodologies from a research point of view on how to do this, right? And I'm a software engineer or a computer engineer by my background, so we take a very data-driven approach towards this. So even on this call this morning, you know, often post these experiences, you might get a survey to kind of complete or fill out to understand your enjoyment of the experience. What we try and do in the context of AR and VR experiences, continuously capture data on the user as they're consuming and interacting with the content. And there's a whole range of metrics that can be captured then to really deeply understand the user behavior in the environment. So one simple example on this is, say we're working on an education VR application and some mathematical task. We can understand what the user is focused on when they're trying to complete this task through the capture of sense data on the user. So we might capture like their eye information or how long it takes them to respond and interact with the virtual object. These are all really important pieces of information on the user behavior in the environment that immersive technologies allow us to capture when we're actually active in the experience. So in the ADAPT Centre and in the Technological University of Shannon, we provide kind of consultancy and development services, but we also have very significant testbed that's available to industry partners and available to the different stakeholders that we like to work with, which basically allows companies to come and work with us and test the technologies that we have in terms of the various presentation devices. So we have a significant range of wearable head-mounted displays for augmented reality experiences, virtual reality experiences. We also have lots of different screen-based technologies that are quite high-end and allow our industry partners to come and use these. And finally, as I said, like these immersive technologies and experiences are no longer restricted to just the audiovisual now. So we have a range of different haptic display devices, which is the sense of touch, which allow very naturalistic interaction, as well as other multisensory devices. So that's from the presentation point of view. So as you will have gathered from what I said about the quality experience research we do, we also have a significant amount of sensor technology in the form of wearables, you know, motion capture systems, different types of physiological sensors, inertial sensors. These all capture data on the users as they're in these environments, which are unbiased. So what that means is, you know, the user behavior in those environments allows us to extract really deep knowledge and understanding on the user and to really understand the utility of these technologies. This is one of the key things we often work with companies in the ADAPT Centre, is that we're trying to help companies understand the utility of these technologies in their particular domain. And what I'd just like to say is that, you know, these are available to you. You know, you can contact Declan or myself afterwards. This is one of the services that we provide. So we look forward to hearing from any of you on this. And the last thing I'm going to talk on this morning is around what the future might look like rather for these immersive technology experiences. So, you know, it's coming up to Christmas now, I guess, and in the last year or two, I've seen lots of these different devices become generally available, and in particular in recent times at quite an attractive price points. So what we're going to see is these immersive experiences widely available, not just on the head-mounted display technologies or on very expensive smartphones. You will see them across a range of different devices, and this will only support the kind of deeper integration of these kind of solutions, in the home, but also in industry. And Jeff will speak to this, I guess, a little bit also shortly, but you will see the emergence of a range of different tools that allow users to create their own immersive experiences. And this will be very, very powerful. It's one of the key challenges that exists currently is around creating of this realistic content. And, Jeff will talk about his expertise on this in a few moments, but we will see tools that allow, lay users to create these kind of experiences. And this will be transformative. What we will also see, I anticipate in the next couple of years, is really intelligent sensing. So there's lots of sensors embedded in these presentation devices, and if we flip the kind of focus on that, you will see that we will use this sensed information to really try and understand the user as they're interacting and working with the technologies. And this will lead then naturally to what we classify or call in the Adapt Center, it's intelligent realities. And so these are these immersive experiences that are truly personalized and unique to particular users. And what will happen, we're actually working on this currently, what will happen in the near future is that these immersive experiences will become truly individualistic. So if I'm doing an education or I'm doing a training program or a task in AR, VR, mine will be different than everybody else's because the scenario will be adopted and adapted to my specific needs. And this will be informed by the intelligent sensing. So I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to kind of talk about here this morning. And I'm happy to answer questions at the end if you have any. So thank you.
Great. Thanks a million, Niall. I'm not sure if my back, I think my audio is unmuted. Good. So, yeah, ecologically valid behavior and intelligent realities, and I guess hyper-personalization, they're really kind of super interesting concepts. And there's no doubt that it's an exciting and it'll be a very fruitful research and applied research and innovation landscape, I think, in this space over the next few years. So now on to Geoff Allen. So Geoff's actually with Mercers, a company that's doing it in reality, actually generating this content, producing it and working with industry. So thank you, Niall, for that. And over now to Geoff.
Good morning, guys, and thanks for coming along. Geoffrey Allen, I'm the founder and business development guy over at Mercers Technologies here in Athlone. And we actually build out experiences for industry for this new emerging technology. I always explain this as the next generation of the internet, and I know Mr. Zuckerberg has played a big card in that direction there quite lately. So there's a lot of interest in it, and as I say, we've been over the last number of years trying to develop different scenarios and find where the market is. The most obvious one now at the moment is training for advanced manufacturing is where we specialize in, but there's a whole range and spectrum of places where this can apply. But this is our own. I'll go through what we do and give you a case study towards the end on a bit of a video. So it's all about the learning, the practice and the repetition. So it's like a golf swing, you just work on it, and then the muscle memory kicks in. But the advantage of immersion is that you're 100% focused on it. And as Niall pointed out, there's a lot of sensors involved. We can track pretty much anything from eye movement to hand movement kinetically, and even they have these haptic suits, they're called Tesla suits, ironically, that can give feedback and put heat and pressure points. So it's all around. We started as an animation as media studio, and then grew up into, actually over the last number of years, we've moved into being a software studio. So it's all about the gamification, learning by doing, and the fail safety bit of it. So we call our platform that we were developing Avatar Academy. And effectively it's a learning experience platform. And that's quite important, that bit of it, because it's the next generation learning management systems. And what it does is it customizes learning experiences for the individual. And that's important. And that means they can serve up what each individual person needs. You're no longer training a class of 20 or 50. So it's all done, and that's all interlinked back to existing LMSs, and you can add in various elements of artificial intelligence. Right now, we have started using text-to-speech bots and stuff like that. My ultimate goal is build a neural network within the training scenarios that can train people one-to-one. So you'll have your own little avatar tutor. So yeah, it's all around the scalability. You can collaborate, we can do multi-user. The analytics are very important in terms of ROI, and it can really reduce costs. We are doing training for in the life science sector, which is our target market, and that reduction of costs is, in time for training is, we're hitting up on 85%. So compliance is another big issue for these people in the life science. And what Mercers do is we use a headset called the Oculus Quest, which is from Facebook. We're Facebook partners, and you interact with your own hands. There's no more gaming controllers. So it's pushing that audience way out beyond the gaming generation into the hands of my folks can do it. You know, you can just put on one of these headsets that you can see, which are fairly cost effective in the region of 350 euros or down to. So if it's on your Santi Christmas list, there's something to consider. So effectively what we do is we take the data in the scene. Now that can come from anywhere. It can be an architect's map, engineers, it can come straight in from a database. We use motion capture, or you can just readily scan it. So then we create the immersive experience. And the really important stuff is the stuff on the right, the analytics, which is actually a whole new part of our company that we're only discovering at the moment. So, and that's the point about the immersive scene. It's very much liquid. It's organic. It's happening right here, right today. There's people come into us and say, oh, we need to catch up. I say, with who? Like, we work with the biggest companies in the world, Siemens, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, and all these companies. So they're not miles ahead anyway. So it's a fairly flat landscape. Here we can see, I was saying about the digitization of the projects. This is a laboratory we captured. Actually, when COVID hit, we couldn't get on site. We captured all this with an iPad, just an iPad, standard iPad. And it's very important for position and scale, because when you make the models, sometimes you make one that's enormous and the other's tiny. So we built out this laboratory. You can see it's in a platform called Unity. There's two major ones, Unity's and Unreal. Unity would be the preferred platform pretty much of the virtual reality, where the Unreal is more in cinema. There's actually an amazing thing came out recently called The Matrix Awakens. Check it out on YouTube. It's new from the PlayStation 4, and it's really photoreal. Now that's what everybody wants, but photoreal costs an awful lot of money to produce. And that's what's really at stake here is the cost. I'll take you through. This is a little case study of a project we did. FIT do apprenticeships for technology. So this is Peter, and it'll give you a flavor. This was in robotics training. And as I said, it's a good application because we're capturing a process. So we digitize the process, and the learner can go through and through. Effectively, Peter's course had 30 people on it, and they'd one robot. So I'll just let this run for a second.
I was offered to try out this new VR project. I sat down, put on the goggles, and I went through the whole procedure.
Sorry.
Afterwards, I was told to try it out on the actual robot. I'd never used a robot before. I'd never picked up a controller, but after going through it in the VR and learning what each one did, I just had a much better idea of actually how to control it and how to operate it. I went through the example that was in the VR, and you're not worried about breaking anything, and you can try and see what all the buttons do, and kind of a good way of learning it, I found.
FIT, an Irish tech apprenticeship provider, approached leading VR specialists Mercers Technologies to recreate their learning experience for the Avatar Academy platform.
We developed this initiative here in Selbridge, where we developed a Level 6 award in advanced manufacturing. One of the things that struck me was that we were teaching people advanced manufacturing techniques. We would talk about IoT and Industry 4.0, but actually we weren't using technology in the learning experience. Why aren't we using VR as a learning tool, an immersive tool, to enable students and those interested in possibly an advanced manufacturing career get insight and experience without being technically proficient?
During the course of developing the virtual training modules, the team visited the robotic training facility to see the robot working.
It was pretty much one-to-one the same. Everything worked, moved as should. Using the teach box to do the same movements in real life was very similar. It would take almost the same amount of presses to do an identical movement in the app as it would in real life. If you figured out a way to move the washer from one side to the other in the app, it'll be identical to real life.
We're limited with the physical robot that we have, so being able to get the students onto VR headsets, it accelerates their training, because we can have 8 or 10 students simultaneously working on it and building the skills, the movement of the robot, the speed of the robot, the interaction with the buttons on the keypads, and that is very realistic to what we have on the real system here. And being able to gain the skills there and then transfer it across to the real robot is excellent. Yeah, the transferability of it is very good. Having gone through it the first time and I went back in the second time, I'd already absorbed a learning experience and configuration of the robotic, unbeknownst to myself, that when I went in the second time, I was pacing through it much faster than the first time. You're experiencing it, and thereby, it's osmosis. It's very interesting.
Bear with me on this. Oops. Yeah, that's back, I think. So yeah, that just gives you a flavor of one of the things that we were doing. So again, if I let this run, this shows the back end, because everything you do when you're in there is captured. Now, this is a very rudimentary back end, but it does everything that's our clients needed to do. We can time people, we can see how they performed in it. We actually have built in a multiple choice question, so it gives you a little exam at the end, and it can spit out a result. Now, the beauty of this is it's short and compact. We don't put people in this for days. It's within 10 to 15 minutes is all that you need, because you take it in so much, you're so immersed, and the results, I say, is pretty phenomenal for that we're getting back at the moment. Some of the constraints that need to be considered when you're building this out, especially, as I say, we're focused on mobile VR. The lighting, the environment has to be reasonably bright for the kinetic sensors to pick up the hand tracking. And we work with approximately, you've got 100,000 polygons per frame per second. Now that's 72 frames per second. So the technical, there's a large part of it. It has to look good and perform on a reasonably limited video card. That's the mobile version of it. As I say, we only promote doing 10 to 15 minutes because people can get disorientated and it is a challenge. That's the problem with poor made media. People start to feel ill, and the space required is quite interesting, because you can literally do our own guys now all working remote. You can immerse yourself in an entire new world and navigate it pretty much in the space of your desk. So as I did point out, Mercers are part of Meta now, Oculus independent software vendor. So we team up with their mixed reality labs, which is good because it just gives us some insights on what's coming down the tracks like that. So overall, I see since the lockdown, the compression of the digital transformation has really accelerated interest in this. And it also, I'm a bit saddened at the fact that there's not more people in the space. You know, it's going to be a huge new, the last 25 years has been about the internet, and the next 25 years is about this media. So that's all I have for now. So any questions, I'll hand it back there to Athlone.
Hi, thank you, Geoffrey. That was a really super interesting. It's great to see, I know this expression is overused, but it's great to see the rubber hit the road when you see that you're building actual environments that are used in a production capacity. You know, very often in the universities, whether it's in the test beds or the consultancy and development and research services that people like Niall can offer in Athlone, often it's quite specific use cases, but so it's great to see it extended into an entire workflow or an entire training program or package. I thought that was a stunning metric there, actually, an 85% reduction in time for training. It's just astounding. Okay, and I know I've got a whole bunch of questions, but we'll hold them till the end of the session, because now I want to hand over to Caitriona Mordan, who's the Education Outreach Manager and the Cluster Manager in TU Shannon in Athlone. So over to you, Caitriona.
Great, thanks. I have a hard act to follow now in Niall and Geoff, but thanks very much for having me on today. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the cluster and really how it acts as a broker between the work that Geoff does and Niall, particularly in the Midlands, and how we can support companies really understand some of these technologies and enable them maybe to access and adopt and embed some of technologies like the immersive technologies that Niall and Geoff mentioned earlier. Okay, so there we go. We have no doubt, based on what Geoff and Niall mentioned, that we are living in an era of digital disruption. And for many, particularly in the manufacturing sector, the term Industry 4.0 has been coined. And really for companies to accelerate, there's been several policy reports, at a European level and even at national level around that. But in order for companies to remain nimble and agile, despite a lot of the cost that are associated, cost inflation, Brexit, it requires a different mindset. These technologies are here. And unfortunately, if companies don't adopt and begin to explore how they can use them, they will be left behind. As Niall mentioned, these technologies are here. And I think the snippet that he mentioned about the way we're going to have personalized technologies, the pace at which they're coming is at an unreal rate. We no longer have to sit back and watch Back to the Future. We are living this now, and these technologies are here. For many companies, though, it does require, there's challenges in terms of understanding how can this technology, how can I use it in my business? How can I adopt it? And where do I go about trying to weave through the vast amounts of materials to understand how can I use it for my business and which is the relevant one? For many, it does require a digital mindset shift in terms of how we're working. And recognizing this then, the government under their Project 2040 focus specifically on regional clusters. So the SMEs are the backbone of our economy, and to support regions understand and for them to develop economic resilience as well, digital transformation is going to be key to that. And under the recognizing that, then Enterprise Ireland, in partnership with the government, they funded 12 clusters across Ireland, and digital transformation is the cross-cutting theme amongst these clusters. The primary objective here is to support industry strategically connect with institutes of technology and universities and knowledge providers across Ireland, so that we can have a more strategic approach to the information that these organizations have and how we can adopt and support companies, increase their resilience and adopt some of these technologies. The ATIM cluster is one of those clusters. So the goal of the cluster is to accelerate the growth and the digital transformation of manufacturing companies and those along their value chain. It is hosted by TUS, as Declan mentioned, and also by the Irish Manufacturing Research. So what is a cluster? My kids often refer to, do I eat cereal? Is that part of my job? It is part of that. But really a cluster, they've been around for many, many years, particularly across Europe as well. And they are more than just a network. So they are an industry-led, university-fueled and government-funded unit where the cluster is almost like the social glue in our ecosystems, identifying what gaps are there and how knowledge can diffuse across all the stakeholders within our regional and national ecosystems as well. And through that, by understanding what the needs of the organizations are at the level of progression they are along their digital transformation spectrum, we can develop a strategic suite of services to support them accelerate their digitalization journey. These are just some of the services that we have on offer, and I won't touch on all of them now in the interest of time. But really it's about, again, bringing people together. How can we move these the information, because tacit information that we need for real innovation to take place is embedded in people and not institutions. So it is a big case about bringing people like Geoff, like Niall together with those working in the manufacturing space and having opportunities to create dialogue, understanding what are their needs and how can we apply them. Another thing that we're working on as well is around site visits. So who has embedded maybe some AR, VR technologies or even other technologies? And can we encourage a culture within Ireland where we're opening up doors, allowing companies to understand how these technologies have benefited other companies and engage in that kind of supportive environment as well? It's fine then understanding what technology and identifying that use case as well, but also that whole understanding of, if I want to bring this in, is there funding available? How can I access that? So that's another one of the briefs within the cluster, is supporting companies. And now there's also the Enterprise Ireland Digitalisation voucher, which is available as well. Sometimes then we have companies, you know, we met ones the other day with Niall. Is there opportunities there? How can I bring in something like a digital twin into my environment? What tools do I need? How can I access that? And is there a case where we can bring different organizations and entities together to explore something new? So developing the research and development side, even looking again within TUS, is there a systematic approach where we can look at how can we get our undergrad students and our postgrad students to understand the real needs that the companies have, and how can they bring that knowledge into these companies in a really practical way? So looking at creating new ways of how companies and students can work with each other to support this too. Competitiveness, you know, we're looking within regional ecosystems, often looking beyond the faraway hills are always greener, as the saying goes. And sometimes when you're able to bring companies together in a smaller space, you can identify opportunities to optimize supply and value chains as well within a smaller network, and really have a really innovative test bed for new ways of learning and thinking. Internationalization, then through the cluster, we can look at different European cluster collaboration platforms and different alliances. So for example, in the polymer side, which the Midlands would be renowned for, there's 18 other polymer clusters as well. So how are they using things like Immersive Technologies? How can we learn from that and actually internationalize as well in that way? Niall mentioned the test before invest. So we have a mass amount of infrastructure here that adapt, that we have in TUS as well. It's there for our companies to use. So how can we facilitate a systematic approach that companies can access and use this and really get to understand it and see if it's applicable for them in their area? This is an example of some of the companies within the cluster. As you can see, there's a breadth of diversity, but through that, we're kind of getting a richness as well in discussion. So it's built upon the strength in the region: manufacturing, digital services, and polymers. And I know even from Geoff's experience as well, sometimes it's having those open discussions where he's understanding maybe some of the challenges even for companies in the construction space. How are they using this? How could they use it? And being able to connect with them to open up new areas and potentially new opportunities for sales in that area too. I suppose we had a brief discussion yesterday, and this quote came to me immediately as well, because sometimes we will get resistance with things, but I think it's about having conversations like this that is really important. And I think, as Henry Ford said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. This technology is here to stay. There is an opportunity for business to understand it and accept it, and I think and utilize it and see what one can best suit their business need. And I think through the cluster and working in areas that we are here today, there's a real opportunity to support companies, support SMEs, so that we can all accelerate our growth together. That's it. And if anyone wants to find out more about the cluster, they can contact me on the details there.
Great, thank you for that, Caitriona. I think also, didn't Henry Ford say something about they can have any color they want as long as it's black, and which kind of flies in the face actually of Niall's point about really hyper personalization and really the opportunities for the adaptation of this technology in various contexts to suit the individual. So I think we're probably moving from you know, a model of having a kind of templated approach to the application of this advanced technology into something that's much more versatile actually in the future beyond it, just as what would have happened with the car industry, no doubt. So thank you for that. So I've a couple of questions here. I might start with Geoffrey actually. I have to say I was really impressed with the quality and the fidelity of the capture you did with an iPad, and I was expecting that you'd need to use something like one of those fancy LiDAR scanners from the Prometheus movie or something like it. But would an iPad be a typical capture device when you're kind of replicating these environments?
I wouldn't say typical, and I hadn't the 25 grand for a LiDAR scanner. No, that was an interesting, and it's the mother of invention is necessity. And that came, the site was in the UK and we needed it scanned. We scanned that for position. Scanning isn't really ideal in terms of, we animate everything. You can do a lot with cameras and images, but it's the hard surfaces that make it interesting, even for revision control. But yeah, you can, we adapted and we said, oh, that iPad had just come out with the LiDAR technology and we used it. It's real MacGyver stuff at this edge. You know, you use what's necessary, and the technology that's in our pockets these days is phenomenal, you know, and the costs, really you're in a perfect storm, and that's what has catapulted immersion, because you can now get, we use all open source software. So it's not actually, with the exception of Adobe, but I'm on Adobe since 1980, so I quite like it. But Unity is open source. I'm not sure about Unreal. Niall might back me up. Blender is the modeling pro, and the costs have really gone through the floor. And that's what people often mistake. The technology is driving costs up. It's not really. When you see all the stuff we get for free, even what we're on here now, you know, a couple of years ago, big companies like JP Morgan spent hundreds of thousands annually on this technology to have video conferencing. Now it's in your pocket for free, you know, and stuff like that. And technologies like AI, which are pervasive now. I don't know if anyone, when I went back to college, I went to do my master's at the financial crash in 2008. I paid 450 quid for voice recognition software. It's now on Google Docs, you know, it comes free, you know, and that's one example of AI that's creeping into our society and our lives, and eventually it'll just be ubiquitous, you know.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that. So Niall, I know that kind of scene capture and analysis and modeling and volumetrics would be important in terms of the setup of your labs and for your research. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, Declan. So just to touch on the point there, like the new iPhone 12, the LiDAR scanner on this is, the quality is really, really impressive, you know, and this kind of speaks to the point I made earlier on about user-generated content and how this will really transform this space, you know. You can create a 3D model of ourselves here sitting in your office with one of these phones now, and you can pipe it into the Unity engine, which Jeff referred to, and it's very quick to do this, you know. Obviously, you know, you need kind of a skill set then to make it as professional as some of the stuff that Jeff presented there, but tools will come, open source tools are becoming available that will allow everyday users to kind of create this kind of experiences. Like in our lab, we have the kind of the high-end infrastructure for creating these, but we also use the end user tools. This is kind of one of the core focuses of our research, so that what we do can be, you know, used in industry as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I know, was it a couple of years ago that Vologram spun out at Trinity from Alyosha Smolch's lab, which is around user-generated, you know, hologram content creation. So that's really interesting. So Niall, we had Geoffrey was talking about his business in the Avatar Academy for the natural sciences, I guess, that kind of business for training. But it strikes me that there's a big demand as well in the healthcare space for telemedicine and so on, especially with COVID. It's hard for people to engage in digital diagnostics or therapies, you know, because they aren't able to get to the hospitals or to the doctors. Are you seeing any of that in your work?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the main agnostic to technology. It's for sure, you know, there's obvious benefits in the manufacturing space that Jeff touched about, and do some work on this ourselves here. But anywhere where we want a user to be active, and that's in most real life scenarios. They're active. So, you know, even as I'm speaking here, I'm moving my hand. This is an indication of how engaged I am in this conversation. You can do this in these kind of experiences, and the power of these technologies is that it allows us to capture data on the user as we're doing this. You know, like whether it's health and safety, you know, interventions or diagnosis in health as well, tourism, you know, cultural arts, humanities, any of these domains, even fashion industry, you're seeing the emergence of immersive technologies across them. And, you know, this is just a seed of what's going to emerge. Like Jeff mentioned about the Oculus headset there, like the price point of this, the support from companies like Facebook or Meta now, and the Microsofts and these kind of companies, these are driving this whole community and this whole technology forward at a really rapid pace. So I think that one of the challenges for it, Declan, is that it is domain agnostic. So if it was specific to one domain, you can put all the focus towards optimization towards that domain, right? But since it's not, often like when companies come and visit us, they go, we bought this headset, so what can we use it for? You know, which is a perfectly valid thing to do, you know, buy the headset and then go, okay, so how do we use it? What do we do this now? Like one of the things that we often work with is trying to work with companies to establish the utility of these technologies for them. And if there is no utility, I say, don't use this. You know, my kind of commitment is to QOE or that kind of research field, right? So if the technology doesn't provide value add or utility, I'd say do something else. But this is the key point in industry here is industry collaborations is to try and understand the utility. And I think Jeff has showcased it in his talk there about, you know, reduced training times, you know, increased retention of information, etc.
Yeah, or the sheer capacity, you know, where you do have dependencies on physical space or equipment or other people's times, the ability to just scale that really in limitless way is extraordinary. So, you know, establishing utility, the try before you buy, the test before you invest, this kind of lab and living lab test bed stuff is important. But can I just maybe ask Caitriona, you know, as cluster manager, what could a company, an SME, do if they had an interest in this area? What's the first thing they should do to you if you're engaging with them in terms of next steps for how to try out the technology?
I think it refers back to what Niall mentioned as well. So contact me. We understand, you know, number one, what's your business goals? Because it does have to align. What is your business type? What are your needs? Where do you want to bring the business? Because it is it is part of a business strategy in terms of what you need to do. But sometimes you need to do that in parallel with things. So you can understand, I think my business wants to go, but for many of the companies, and Jeff, I'm sure would echo it as well from the cluster, it is sometimes bringing them a little bit further along. So I mentioned as well, seeing, understanding, talking to other people, because there's a lack of, this is a new space for many companies, and I referred to the digital mindset in what I said as well. So it is a case of talking to people, but I would say ask companies to contact me. I'll understand what their needs are. And from that, then we're able to kind of say, we can meet with Jeff or meet with the relevant people, and then maybe bring them on site and really get to see, touch, feel, and understand how it could be of use to them. And then if there is a means to, if they want to explore it further, we can identify different funding models that can support that.
Okay, that's great. Well, look, on that note, we'll leave it at that. So it just remains to say thanks to yourself, Caitriona, to Niall, and to Jeff for your time this morning. This is a recorded webinar, so it's going to be available on the ADAPT website tomorrow. So we'll send out links in our e-zine. If you want to get in touch with ADAPT, it's a collaboration at adaptcentre.ie, and Caitriona's contact details, Niall's and Geoffrey's, of course, will be available in the context of wherever we publish the video, probably YouTube, I think. So thanks, everybody. Have a happy Christmas and look forward to seeing you all in 2022.